James Wilson wasn't the type of man who complained about his food. After 15 years of working as a deep space cargo pilot, he had eaten everything from synthetic protein bars to genuine Martian mushrooms. But today, sitting in the dimly lit corner of the Star Diner on Station Beta 7, he just wanted a proper Earth-style steak. The diner was quiet, typical for the station's night cycle. The soft hum of life support systems provided a constant background noise, punctuated occasionally by the clink of cutlery or the whoosh of the automatic doors. The establishment's ancient neon signs cast a reddish glow across the metal walls, creating an atmosphere that was both nostalgic and slightly eerie. "I'll have the steak," James told the waiter, an older man with cybernetic eyes that glowed a faint blue. "As rare as you can make it." The waiter's cybernetic eyes flickered briefly. "Sir, our rarest option is quite unusual." "Are you certain?" James nodded firmly. After months of processed food on his last cargo run, he craved something real, something with texture and taste. "Absolutely certain. The rarer, the better." The waiter hesitated for a moment longer than necessary, then nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. James couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the whole interaction, but he dismissed it as paranoia, an occupational hazard of working in deep space. 20 minutes passed, marked by the steady ticking of an antique Earth clock mounted on the wall. When the waiter returned, he was carrying a covered silver dish that seemed to emit a faint, pulsing glow from beneath the lid. "Your order, sir," the waiter announced, his voice carrying an undertone of, "Was that anxiety?" "Our chef's special preparation. Please enjoy." The moment the waiter lifted the lid, James knew something was terribly wrong. Instead of a steak, there was a small, humanoid figure curled up on the plate. Her skin was a pale, iridescent blue, and delicate, translucent wings were folded against her back. She appeared to be unconscious, but very much alive. James's fork clattered to the floor. The creature, girl, whatever she was, couldn't have been more than 6 inches tall. She was dressed in what looked like living flower petals, and her hair resembled fine strands of starlight. "There must be some mistake," James managed to say, his voice barely a whisper. The waiter's cybernetic eyes whirred as they focused. "No mistake, sir. You ordered the rarest item on our menu. This is what we serve to those who know to ask." Before James could respond, the tiny figure on his plate stirred. Her eyes opened, revealing pupils that sparkled like distant galaxies. She sat up, looked directly at James, and spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Please," she said in perfect English, "you have to help me escape. They're selling us as delicacies to the highest bidders. I'm not the only one." James felt his world tilt on its axis. What had started as a simple dinner order had just become something far more complicated and dangerous. He was about to be pulled into a conspiracy that went far deeper than unusual menu items at a space station diner. James's mind raced. The waiter was still standing there, cybernetic eyes fixed on him, waiting for, what? A reaction? Payment? He needed to think fast. "Everything is to your satisfaction, sir?" the waiter asked, his tone carrying a subtle threat. James forced a smile. "Yes, quite unusual. I need a moment to savor this." He made a show of reaching for his napkin, carefully dropping it over the tiny alien girl. To anyone watching, it would look like he was preparing to eat. The waiter nodded and stepped away, but James noticed he didn't go far. Instead, he positioned himself behind the counter, pretending to clean glasses while keeping an eye on their corner table. "What's your name?" James whispered to the napkin, trying to move his lips as little as possible. "Lily," came the soft reply. The name sounded like a translation, something she'd chosen for human ears. "There are 12 others like me in the kitchen. They keep us in stasis pods until someone orders us." James felt sick. He'd heard rumors of exotic food trafficking in the outer stations, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. "Can you hold on to my shirt?" he whispered. "Under the jacket?" "Yes," Lily answered. "But the others?" "One step at a time," James murmured. He pretended to take another sip of his drink, then carefully lifted the napkin as if wiping his mouth. In that quick motion, Lily darted from the plate to his shirt, her movements too fast for human eyes to track. James pulled out his credit chip, trying to act natural. His heart was pounding so hard he worried the waiter might hear it. He got up, walking to the counter to pay, knowing that trying to leave without doing so would raise immediate suspicion. "I hope you enjoyed our special offering," the waiter said as he processed the payment. "We don't serve it to just anyone." "Unforgettable," James replied, forcing his voice to stay steady. "I'll be sure to recommend it to the right people." He was almost to the door when he heard it, the sound of breaking glass from the kitchen, followed by shouting. James didn't need to look back to know what had happened. They'd discovered Lily was missing. "Stop him!" the waiter's voice rang out. James broke into a run. The station's corridors stretched before him like a maze, but he knew them well. Every cargo pilot did. He ducked into a maintenance shaft, his boots clanging against the metal grating. "Hold tight," he whispered to Lily. "This is going to get rough." Behind them, he could hear the pounding of feet and angry voices. The diner's security would be calling station authorities soon, probably with some made-up story about theft or dining and dashing. "Take the next right," Lily whispered urgently. "The others are kept in a storage room connected to the kitchen's cooling system. There's an external access panel." James hesitated for a split second. Going back was incredibly risky, but he couldn't leave those others to their fate. He thought of all the rare steaks that had probably been ordered before, of all the beings like Lily who hadn't been lucky enough to find someone willing to help. "Right it is," he said, changing direction. "But we'll need a plan. Quick question, how good are you with electronics?" "My people built the first quantum computers when humans were still using steam engines," Lily replied, a hint of pride in her musical voice. James grinned despite the danger. "Perfect. Because we're about to hack into a storage unit, rescue your people, and probably start an interstellar diplomatic incident in the process." "That's what you humans do best, isn't it?" Lily said. "Causing trouble for all the right reasons." "You have no idea," James replied, already working out the details of their improvised rescue mission. The night was about to get a lot more interesting, and a lot more dangerous. The external access panel to the cooling system was exactly where Lily said it would be, a small, inconspicuous hatch marked with faded warning signs about refrigeration hazards. James could hear the pursuit growing more distant. They'd gone the wrong way at the last junction. "They'll figure out their mistake soon enough," he muttered, examining the panel's security lock. "How fast can you work your magic?" Lily emerged from his collar, her wings catching the dim emergency lighting. "Fast enough. But I need to get closer." James cupped his hands, creating a platform for her to stand on, and raised her to the access panel's keypad. Her tiny hands moved in a blur, manipulating energy fields that were barely visible to human eyes. The panel's display flickered, showed a series of error messages, and then turned green. 3 minutes, she announced. "That's how long before their systems detect the breach." The panel slid open with a soft hiss of escaping cold air. Inside, metal shelving held dozens of stasis pods, 12 of which glowed with a soft, pulsing light, the same glow James had seen beneath the serving dish's lid. "These controls are biological," Lily explained, hovering near the nearest pod. "They're key to our species' energy signature. I can wake them, but they'll be groggy. We'll need to carry them." James shrugged off his jacket, creating a makeshift sling. "Will this work?" "Perfect." Lily placed her hands on the first pod, which began to brighten. "Just don't drop us." One by one, the pods activated. Each one revealed another of Lily's people, all unique in their coloring and features, but sharing the same diminutive size and ethereal beauty. As they awakened, James carefully gathered them into his jacket, trying not to damage their delicate wings. 2 minutes, Lily warned, working on the last pod. That's when they heard voices approaching, different ones this time, speaking in the clipped tones of station security. All areas surrounding Sector 7, this is Control. Be advised, we have reports of a cargo pilot assaulting restaurant staff and stealing valuable property. Suspect is armed and dangerous. Shoot to stun on sight. James almost laughed. Armed and dangerous? I haven't even thrown a punch. Humans, one of the newly awakened aliens commented, her voice like chimes in a storm. Always getting into trouble. Less talking, more escaping, James replied. He checked that all 12 rescues were secure in his jacket-turn-carrier, while Lily returned to her position near his collar. Anyone got any bright ideas for getting out of here? Lily's wings sparkled as she thought. The maintenance shaft you used earlier, it connects to the cargo bays, right? Yeah, but they'll be watching those now. What about the waste disposal system? James grimaced. You want us to escape through the trash? Not exactly, Lily said, and James could hear the smile in her voice. Your ship, it's designed for cargo transport through any conditions, yes? Sure, but James began to grin as he caught on to her plan. You're thinking about the emergency protocols. If there's a waste system malfunction, all sealed containers in the disposal area would be automatically ejected into space, Lily finished. To prevent contamination of the station. From down the corridor came the sound of boots on metal grating. They were running out of time. We'll need a container that's space-worthy, James said, already moving toward the disposal area. And a way to trigger the emergency protocols without actually creating a biological hazard. Leave the protocols to us, one of the other aliens chirped from the jacket's sling. Your kind aren't the only ones good at causing trouble. They reached the disposal area just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights started flashing, and a computerized voice announced, Warning! Biological contamination detected in Waste Disposal Sector 7. Emergency protocols engaging in 3 minutes. James spotted what they needed, a sealed cargo container, about the size of a small car, marked for deep space transport. That's our ride. Everyone in? He opened the container's hatch, carefully transferring his passengers inside. Lily was the last to enter, pausing at the threshold. You know, for a species that's supposedly less advanced than ours, you humans have a remarkable talent for improvising. That's kind of our thing, James replied, checking the container's seal. Now let's hope your people are as good at hacking as you say they are. The station's computer voice began its final countdown. In moments, they would either be safely ejected into space, ready to make a run for James's ship, or they'd be caught by station security and face charges that would make exotic food trafficking look like a minor offense. Either way, James realized he'd never look at a rare steak the same way again. The container shuddered as the station's emergency systems engaged. James braced himself against the inner wall, checking one last time that his small passengers were secure. The space inside was cramped but manageable, originally designed to transport sensitive materials through the vacuum of space. 30 seconds to ejection, the station's computer announced, its voice eerily calm. Once we're out there, we'll have about 10 minutes before my ship's life support systems kick in, James explained. The container's got basic thrusters, but they're not meant for precision movement. Lily and her people had arranged themselves in a circle, their wings creating a gentle glow that illuminated the container's interior. We can help with that, she said. Our energy fields can interact with the thruster systems. Think of it as giving them a boost. Warning, the computer's voice cut in. Security override attempted. Ejection protocols. The message cut off abruptly, replaced by a burst of static. That would be my sister's work, one of the aliens announced proudly. She's quite good at confusing computer systems. The container lurched. James felt the telltale sensation of artificial gravity giving way to true weightlessness. They were being ejected. Brace for, he started to say, but the word, impact, was lost in the thunderous clang of the disposal system launching them into space. The container spun wildly, its emergency stabilizers struggling to compensate. Through the small viewport, James caught glimpses of the station spinning past, a massive structure of metal and lights against the star-filled void. He could see security ships already launching, their running lights cutting bright lines through the darkness. "We need to move," he said. "My ship's docked in Bay 47, about 2 kilometers from here. But those security vessels will reach us before." "Watch," Lily interrupted. She and her companions had begun to glow brighter, their wings beating in perfect synchronization. The container's thrusters whined, then roared with new power. Their wild spin stabilized, and James felt them accelerating far faster than the small engines should have been capable of. "Fascinating," he murmured, watching as trails of ethereal energy flowed from the diminutive aliens into the container's propulsion systems. "Your people aren't just technically advanced, you're natural energy manipulators. Hence why we're considered such a delicacy," one of the others explained bitterly. "Our bodies generate fields that can enhance and transform other energy sources. Some species believe consuming us will give them our abilities. Which is completely wrong, of course," Lily added. "But try explaining basic biology to someone who's paid a fortune for an exotic meal." Security ships were gaining on them, their warning lights flashing. A voice crackled over the container's emergency communication system. "Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of station protocols. Power down immediately or we will open fire." "They won't actually shoot," James said, though he didn't feel entirely confident about that. "Too much risk of damaging the station if they miss." "They might not shoot," Lily agreed. "But they don't have to." She pointed through the viewport at a new threat, a shimmering energy net deploying between two of the pursuit vessels. "If that catches us, we're done," James said. "The container's shielding won't hold against a direct energy web impact." Lily exchanged looks with her companions. "We could try something," she said carefully. "But it's risky. We'd need to channel our energy through the container's outer hull instead of the thrusters. It might create a disruption field strong enough to pass through their net." "Might? Either that or overload the container's systems and leave us exposed to vacuum." James checked the distance to his ship, still too far. The security net was closing in. Sometimes the best plans were the crazy ones. It was practically a motto among human space pilots. "Do it," he said. "My people have a saying, go big or go home." Lily's answering smile was like starlight. "Funny. We have a similar expression. Though in our language, it translates more like, if you're going to disrupt the fabric of space-time, disrupt it spectacularly." The container's hull began to glow as 13 pairs of crystalline wings beat in unison, building up to something that would either save them or scatter them across the stars. Light exploded around them. The container's hull resonated with energy as Lily and her people poured their power into it. James had to squint against the brightness, the metal walls now glowing like a miniature sun. 10 seconds until net contact," he called out, watching through watering eyes as the security ship's energy web drew closer. The pursuit vessels had spread out, trying to cut off any escape routes. "Almost there." Lily's voice was strained. Sweat, or something like it, glistened on her tiny forehead. The other aliens were similarly focused, their wings beating so fast they were just blurs of light. The container's temperature was rising. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, structural integrity at 60% and falling. They were literally cooking themselves alive. 5 seconds! The security net crackled with lethal energy, close enough now that James could see the complex patterns of power flowing through it. No standard ship had ever passed through one of those nets intact. But then again, no ship had ever been powered by 13 energy-manipulating aliens. "Now!" Lily shouted. The universe seemed to hiccup. That was the only way James could describe it later, a moment where reality itself appeared to stutter and skip like a corrupted data file. The container's hull shifted from glowing white to a color that human eyes couldn't quite process. They hit the security net. Instead of the expected catastrophic energy discharge, the net simply unraveled. Where their container passed, the energy strings fell apart like a sweater with a pulled thread. James heard distant alarms as the security ship's systems reacted to the impossible event they were witnessing. Ha! One of Lily's companions exclaimed. Did you see their faces through the viewports? Priceless! Less celebrating, more focusing, Lily said through gritted teeth. We're not clear yet. She was right. The container's hull was starting to buckle, patches of metal turning liquid at the molecular level. The aliens' power was literally melting their escape vessel. My ship's just ahead, James said, pointing through the viewport at a battered cargo vessel floating in its dock. But we're coming in too hot. If we hit the docking bay at this speed... We won't, Lily interrupted. Everyone, reverse polarity. Like the stellar wind dancing. The other aliens immediately changed their wing-beating pattern. The container shuddered, then began to slow as the energy field around it shifted from propulsion to braking. They were still moving too fast. James watched as his ship grew larger in the viewport, mentally calculating their approach velocity. We need to shed more speed. We're trying. Lily's voice was barely a whisper now. But the container, it's failing. James looked around frantically. The hull was definitely melting now, small holes appearing as metal sublimated into space. The emergency force fields were the only thing keeping them alive, and those were powered by the same systems that were currently overloading. Then he noticed something. Where the hull was melting, it was creating a pattern. Not random holes, but a specific configuration that looked almost like. It's a circuit, he breathed. Lily! The hull degradation, it's not random. The metal's reorganizing at the atomic level. You're not just powering the container, you're redesigning it. Lily's eyes widened with understanding. Of course. Just like the great hives during migration season. She called out to her companions in their musical language, and their wing beats changed again. The melting hull began to flow like quicksilver, forming new structures and patterns. What had been simple cargo container walls were transforming into something far more complex, a living circuit that channeled and amplified the aliens' power. Through the viewport, James could see the security ships falling behind, their crews probably staring in disbelief at what they were witnessing. His own ship was still approaching too quickly, but now they had a chance. If the container's transformation completed before they reached it. One more trick, Lily announced, her voice stronger now. James, you might want to close your eyes for this part. Things are about to get weird. Coming from someone who could manipulate energy and transform metal with their mind, that was saying something. James closed his eyes, held tight to the nearest support, and prepared for whatever, weird, meant to a species that treated physics more like guidelines than laws. When James opened his eyes again, he wasn't in the container anymore. He was standing in his ship's cargo hold, surrounded by swirling patterns of light that were slowly fading from the air. The container was nowhere to be seen, but Lily and her 12 companions hovered nearby, their wings dimmed to a gentle glow. What just happened? He managed to ask. We quantum tunneled, Lily explained, landing delicately on a nearby cargo crate. Basically, we transformed the container's entire structure into energy, then reconstructed ourselves here. Simple, really. Simple, James repeated weakly. Right. Warning klaxons blared through the ship. The security vessels were still out there, and now they were preparing to lock onto his ship with tractor beams. Time to go, James said, sprinting for the bridge. Unless you can quantum tunnel the whole ship? Not without a few hours of preparation, Lily replied, following him with her companions. But we can help in other ways. James slid into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls. The ship's engines hummed to life, but the computer flashed a warning. Alert! Station docking clamps engaged. Launch sequence disabled. They've locked us down, James muttered. Override codes won't work fast enough. Allow us, Lily said. She and her people spread out across the control panel, their wings beginning to pulse with renewed energy. Your ship's systems are quite primitive compared to the container, but the principles are the same. Ready? James gripped the controls. Ready. The aliens began to sing. It wasn't music as humans would understand it, more like the sound of solar winds converted to audio, or the resonance of quantum particles dancing between states. The ship's systems responded, displays flickering as new energy flowed through old circuits. The docking clamps disengaged with a thunderous clang. Before the security ships could react, James punched the engines to full power. They shot out of the docking bay like a cork from a bottle. "They're charging weapons," James announced, watching the tactical display. "And those are definitely not set to stun." "Hard turn on my mark," Lily commanded. Her people had formed a circle in the air, wings beating in complex patterns. "We're going to try something that your people won't discover for about 300 years. The security ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space toward them. "Mark!" James yanked the controls. At the same moment, Lily and her companions released a burst of power that rippled through the ship's hull. Space itself seemed to bend around them. The weapon's fire passed through empty vacuum where they had been a split second before. "What was that?" James asked, watching the security ships grow smaller on his screens. "A localized space-time bubble," Lily explained. "We didn't move the ship, we moved the space around it. Much more efficient." James shook his head in amazement. "You know, when I ordered a rare steak tonight, I wasn't expecting to help rescue a group of reality-bending aliens and become a fugitive from station security. And we weren't expecting to find a human willing to risk everything to help us," Lily replied. "Your kind has a reputation for being—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Unpredictable. But also unexpectedly noble, when it matters." The ship's long-range sensors showed no pursuit. They had done it, actually escaped from a maximum security station with 13 illegal delicacies, and lived to tell about it. "So," James said, setting course for open space. "Where to now?" "Our homeworld is about 30 light-years from here," Lily said. "But we'll need to make some stops along the way. There are other restaurants, other stations, other people like us being sold as exotic meals." James grinned. "You know, I've always thought my cargo runs could use a little more excitement. And I happen to know quite a few stations with expensive restaurants. A human cargo pilot and 13 energy-manipulating aliens, traveling the galaxy and breaking up exotic food trafficking rings?" Lily laughed, the sound like crystal wind chimes. "The universe won't know what hit it. That's kind of what we humans do best," James said, plotting their first course. "We shake things up." As the ship accelerated to light speed, James realized that he'd never actually gotten his steak. But somehow, he had a feeling this was going to be a much more satisfying adventure than any meal could have been.